Hello. In case you don't know me, I am Peter Tylor from St Austell in Cornwall, best known on YouTube for my videos of the organs at Holy Trinity Church in St Austell and St Muren Church, where I regularly play on Sundays, and also of the reed organ at my house. Now, I don't normally do vlogs, and I certainly don't intend to make a habit of it. Normally, I don't really have that much to report in relation to my organ playing, but a couple of things have happened recently which are rather pertinent to what I do here on YouTube, and I thought I ought to share them with you. Now, the first of these has to do with Holy Trinity. There's a picture of it there, by the way. Holy Trinity, as you may know from my videos, has a lovely pipe organ, 3 manuals and pedals with 35 speaking stops, which is currently under threat because there are plans to alter the church and they want the space the organ takes up for meeting rooms. Now, there's recently been an article about this in the St Austell Voice, one of our local papers. The Wednesday, January 25th, 2017 issue says on the front, "Church organ to be scrapped." Well, hopefully that's an oversimplification. But inside, there is indeed an article headed, "Church to replace old organ." It begins, "The 15th century church at the heart of St Austell is bringing worship into the 21st century as it prepares to remove the old organ, which needs thousands of pounds worth of repair work, and replace it with a modern version. Nearly 2 years ago, the congregation of Holy Trinity Church revealed its 2020 vision, so-called, to reconfigure the interior of the church and create facilities which will see the building brought to life every day of the week." And it continues, "As part of those plans, it has been revealed that the church organ, which needs repair work to the tune of £100,000, will be removed to make more space." Now, a few months ago, I understand that there was an estimate of £70,000 for repairing the organ, and that in itself seems quite high, but why it's now 100,000 I don't know. But anyway, the article continues, "Church warden Heather Baffo said the organ would be replaced with a more modern, portable organ which would give a better sound and be more practical for today." Heather told The Voice, "We have got all sorts of plans for opening up the church to the community. We want the space where the organ is, as it takes up a huge amount of space and it does need a lot of money spending on it to put it in working order and up to scratch. We are not going to do away with an organ completely. We will replace it with a modern, portable organ which will give us a space and provide us with the sound we want when we want. During services on a Sunday, we don't use the organ, we have a band." And she continues that to the effect that if they repair the present organ, they'd be spending a massive amount of money on an organ that they only use for weddings and funerals. And Heather continues, "We may be able to sell the old one, but have not made any inquiries. We are not a museum, we are a worshipping community in the 21st century." Heather said they had now appointed an architect and a more detailed plan for the church would be displayed to the public shortly. Well, I felt that that needed to be answered, and so I wrote a letter to the St Austell Voice, and I'm glad to say that the next issue of the St Austell Voice printed my letter almost in its entirety. I begin, "As one who plays the organ for services at another church in the St Austell area, St Muren, I must express my regret, which I am far from alone in feeling, that the pipe organ at Holy Trinity Church, a fine and beautiful instrument, but one which apparently needs expensive repairs, is to be replaced with an electronic organ so that space can be made for meeting rooms. I point out that something very similar happened at St Austell Baptist Church back in about 1980. The current building of St Austell Baptist Church was opened in 1900, and when it opened they had a brand new pipe organ built by the local firm of J. Trudgeon and Son of St Denis, which seems to have been the largest organ built by that firm, who did a lot of good work in chapels in this area. But in about 1980 they decided that it was costing too much to maintain, and so they replaced it with an electric organ, and the space where the pipe organ used to be was partitioned off and turned into a classroom. Alas, I say that history should thus repeat itself in our town. Then I mentioned the fact that electronic organs can't really be expected to last as long as pipe organs, and I mentioned the fact that my own church, St Ewan, about 25 years ago was faced with the issue of whether to repair or replace. Their pipe organ was built in 1909, and so after about 8 years of service it was due for renovation. And I understand that they considered replacing it with an electronic instrument which, it was claimed, had voices derived from the digital sampling of some of the world's greatest organs. But in the end they decided to rebuild the organ that was already there, and I say that that was a wise decision, because if they'd replaced it with an electronic, they might now be having to repair or replace it all over again, but the pipe organ is still going strong, and should continue to do so for many years to come. And then I say, whilst I understand and sympathise with the reasoning behind Holy Trinity's proposals, I would be no less sorry to see their pipe organ go, the more especially as it is to this very instrument that I owe my appreciation of organs and their music. I was baptised at Holy Trinity, and went there as a child, and up to my mid-teens I went there. And I was fascinated by the appearance of the organ, with its carved woodwork and its patterned pipes, and delighted by the sounds it made. Although it was not until later years that I had any desire to learn to play any musical instrument myself, the mystery and majesty of the Holy Trinity pipe organ made a great and lasting impression upon me, in a way which an electronic, no matter how good, could never have done. And then I say that I was invited to play the Holy Trinity organ for the first time in 2013, and I've done so at various times since. And I say, although in its current state not everything always works as it should, it remains a versatile and wonderful sounding instrument which deserves to be repaired. Would this really cost as much as is estimated? And to be more often used and appreciated by the church and the wider community of St Austell. And finally, I mentioned the fact that there are videos of this organ on YouTube, although I don't say who put them there. But I do say that these videos include versions of modern worship songs. Proof that organs should not be dismissed as outmoded relics of the past, suitable only for old hymns, and retained solely for use at weddings and funerals. And in fact, there was not just my letter, but there were 3 comments online about the article, and these were printed in the following issue, the February 8th issue of the Printed Voice, which itself has yet another letter which is against removing the organ. Firstly, these online comments. There's one that says it's strange that the community goes nowhere near a church for possibly decades, and then when the change to the church is proposed, they kick up a fuss. He thinks that's a bit silly. But then the second one is from a worshipper at Holy Trinity who's really sad that they're planning to get rid of the organ. And then there's a third one from somebody else who seems to have connections with Holy Trinity, who begins by saying that they respect the current needs for space in order to enable present worship requirements at Holy Trinity, but continues, in the future, as life often goes in circles, traditional worship may be valued. And then the proposal to remove the organ might serve needs presently, but in the future this might be unfair to those who need the security of a well-established tradition. But as I say, there's also in the latest issue a printed letter beginning, and this is by a gentleman from St Austell called John James, and it begins, "Well, having recorded the first section of my vlog, I realised afterwards that the camera had cut out just after I started on this letter. So here goes again. John James from St Austell begins, I read with horror of the plans to dispose of the organ at Holy Trinity Parish Church at St Austell. This is a magnificent instrument, befitting the standing of Holy Trinity with its superb tone and capabilities. It is to be expected that it could be due for a service, and items will be found requiring attention to keep it ready for the next 100 years. But I do not know where the figure of £100,000 comes from, and why is such a splendid facility not being used for at least some Sunday services?" And he says that he visualises with wonder the site centuries ago when Holy Trinity was being built, without modern equipment, but a massive undertaking, being built and richly embellished to the glory of God, and how it's continued to be richly embellished to the glory of God in succeeding centuries, with the addition of the windows, baptistry, pulpits, organ, etc., all of a high standard in keeping with its purpose as God's house. But, he says, sadly many incomers have set themselves to change everything in recent years. First the Gloucester choir, then the services themselves were changed, away from the Book of Common Prayer, and then the music changed to a music group and bands, and next plans to virtually gut the church and be rid of much of the interior, depriving us at St Austell of much of our heritage. Many visitors to the church have written comments and left prayers showing what they think of such planned destruction. And that's quite true, because in the visitors' book at Holy Trinity Church in recent months, there have been a number of comments saying, please don't change the church too much, and a few specifically mentioning the organ. And as a result of my letter in the Voice, a lady from Holy Trinity has contacted me with the suggestion that maybe we should have an organ recital at Holy Trinity to raise awareness of the organ, and also to raise money for another estimate of the repair costs. And so we will have to wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, I'll carry on going to Holy Trinity and playing the organ, if they let me, and making videos of it, and by that means continue raising awareness of the Holy Trinity organ and doing my bit, hopefully, towards its being saved. But anyway, here is the second thing that has happened recently that you might be interested to know. Last weekend, I received the latest issue of the Hymn Society Bulletin. Now, in case you haven't heard of the Hymn Society of Great Britain and Ireland, here is some information about it. The Hymn Society is a diverse group of people, all sharing an interest in hymns. There were about 450 individual members, and over 50 subscribing libraries and other institutions. Some have a special interest in words and or music. There are hymn writers, composers, hymn book editors. Many members are responsible for the choice of hymns in worship, as indeed I am at my Church of St Muren. Others are hymn enthusiasts, or simply enjoy singing hymns. And the Society has 4 principal aims. encouraging study and research in hymnody, promoting good standards of hymn singing, encouraging the discerning use of hymns and songs in worship, and sponsoring relevant publications. And Hymn Society members receive a quarterly newsletter and bulletin containing a wide range of articles on hymns and hymnody, book reviews and reports of events, and occasional papers dealing with specific topics in greater depth are published separately, usually one a year. And they also offer an advice service available for hymn texts and tunes. And they've been going for 80 years now, established 1936, and I've been a member of it for about the last 10 or 15 of those years. But not until now had I actually written any article for them. But the latest issue of the Hymn Society Bulletin, there it is, and on the front cover there's a picture of Timothy Dudley Smith, the hymn writer who has written Tell Out My Soul, Lord for the Years, and many other excellent hymns. And he's recently celebrated his 90th birthday. Anyway, this issue of the Bulletin begins with an article called Singing in the Monsoon, Hymns in Colonial Burma by Andrew Self. And after that, there's an article called Make Me a Channel of Blessing, My Ministry as a Church Organist on YouTube by Peter Tylor. And I begin this article by mentioning the wealth of recordings of hymns and hymn tunes that are to be found here on YouTube, taking many different forms. And then I say how I came to be on YouTube, how originally I sort of mistrusted it, but then I realised how useful it could be, and then how the conviction grew upon me early in 2015 that I should start making videos myself. And so I began, as I say, with my first video on the 13th of July 2015, and since then I've uploaded between 2 and 3 videos a week on average, so that as of 29th June 2016 my channel has 133 published videos, with a total of 18,565 views from all over the world, and 53 subscribers. Well, that's a bit out of date now, because now I have over 200 videos, and 129 subscribers at the last count, and more like 52,000 views. And then I describe my output. Thus far, it consists mainly of instrumental versions of hymns, worship songs and other church music, which I currently record on the pipe organs at Holy Trinity and at St Ewan, and on my antique reed organ at home. And then I say, whilst I've been known to play well-known traditional hymns to their customary tunes, and school assembly songs from my 1980s childhood, I specialise in 2 distinct areas. The first of these is Victorian and Edwardian rarities. As I say, I find it very satisfying to identify and upload items that were previously unavailable on YouTube, sometimes bringing them back into public consciousness after decades of oblivion. And my other speciality, contemporary and contemporary-ish worship songs. And in this too, I exercise my role as a gap filler, as mine are sometimes the only organ versions of these songs to be found on YouTube. And I mention my playlist of contemporary worship songs played on the organ, which has had thousands of views. And I continue, my avowed intent in making and uploading videos is to entertain, educate, and or provide spiritual uplift to those who watch them, to promote the church organ and assert the continued validity of its use in Christian worship, even where contemporary styles and songs prevail, and, in the case of those made at Holy Trinity, to draw attention to the merits and plight of the organ there. Furthermore, this activity is not just a hobby for me, but also a form of Christian ministry. Through my renditions of hymns and worship songs, with their accompanying descriptions, over which I take much time and care, and in which I usually include the lyrics, or a link to the lyrics on another site, I declare my faith, proclaim the gospel, and serve the church in the way I feel best qualified to do so, i.e. through music. And meanwhile, as they're freely available worldwide to anyone with internet access who cares to watch or listen to them, these videos may, if God chooses so to use them, prove a means of blessing to others. And then I mention the social aspect of YouTube, and I say that I find this aspect really quite rewarding, highly rewarding in fact. As part of a small community of hymn uploading organists on YouTube, not only can I enjoy and learn from the videos posted by my fellow musicians, but I can also maintain friendly contact with them, and they with me, by exchanging comments on each other's videos, and thereby sharing ideas, information and encouragements. And I also mention some responses to my videos that I've received from the wider online community. And I finished my article by mentioning some other YouTube channels that I think could be of particular interest to Hymn Society members. I begin with the 4 channels that I credit for the initial spark of inspiration that's led me to start my own channel, these being the channels of Rob Charles, David Philp, Chris Lawton and Richard Shirley, and I mentioned some other channels including the Songs of Praise channel. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my vlog, and hopefully you'll see me again in the not too distant future. But for now, thank you, and goodbye.